Hello, folks, and welcome back to One to Deploy. I'm your host, Daniel Martin, and we're on the podcast where we break down strategies, tools, and ideas that actually move the needle. Today, we're diving into something that sits right at the heart of where business and technology are colliding: the rise of startup currencies, and more specifically, why I believe every startup in the near future will launch its own token. No, this isn't just about crypto hype. This is about the fundamental shift in how businesses raise money, build communities, and fundamentally operate. I'll be walking you through how I use it in my own project, KYMAi, as the example. Section 1, the broken fundraising model. Let's start with the obvious problem. The traditional fundraising model is broken. You see, the old path, it looks like this. First, you bootstrap. You scrape by, and you beg family and friends to give you some cash to make this thing work. Then you pitch to angel and seed investors. You give away equity way too early, and then you tie yourself to a few gatekeepers, a few people that basically govern the decisions that you make in the business going forward, because they hold an overly large percentage of the idea or the business. If you are lucky, and I say lucky, you move on to then venture capital. And define lucky and venture capital in the same sentence, I'm not so sure. And then maybe, just maybe, you IPO. IPO being initial public offering. In other words, you launch on the stock exchange. That journey is slow, it's closed off, and the fact of the matter is it is stacked in favor of people who already have money and access. The people that you are pitching to that have the money ultimately build deals that work in favor of themselves. You can't really blame them because, hey, if I was giving away the cash, I'd do the same thing, but it doesn't work in the favor of the founder. Meanwhile, blockchain has opened the door for a different model. With a startup currency, you can raise funds globally from day one. Instead of selling pieces of paper that you say are, quote, shares, you launch a token that represents both utility in your ecosystem and exposure to your company's success. Key here, utility in your ecosystem. It must have that, and that is distinctly different from pieces of paper that say they are shares. That is what KYMAi is built on. Section 2, currency as a growth engine. Now here's where people usually get stuck. The question, well, why would anyone want a token? Isn't that just funny money? Interesting, I had exactly this question in a conversation I had with a friend yesterday at lunch. Really smart guy, really wealthy guy too, as it happens. He said, yeah, but it's all just fake. This token doesn't mean anything. And of course, I had a conversation not dissimilar to this, and whilst he began to understand, he then related it back to shares and real currency that we have now. The fact of the matter is none of this stuff is tied to anything that's an actual asset, so it's really quite valueless. Well, I'd argue differently, because it isn't just funny money if it is designed properly. And this is where the key comes in. A token becomes a, quote, growth engine of your business when it is tied directly to the ecosystem. In other words, the token is fundamental to the way that the business and the ecosystem of that business operates. In the case of KYMAi, this means it's the billing layer. Clients pay in KYMAi for market intelligence services. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're ponying up KYMAi. They can buy KYMAi in fiat currencies, and we are using KYMAi as the billing engine for our platform. So the transactions that occur within the platform become publicly visible on the Ethereum ledger. It's a reward and access layer or governance layer. It allows community members, partners, and contributors to earn rewards, but also to have a say in where the business goes. Much like voting in shares, when you hold KYMAi, you will have access to governance rights in the project. And probably most importantly for those listening to this podcast, it's the exposure layer. By holding KYMAi, you are essentially tied to the upside of the entire KnowYourMarket.ai ecosystem. Similar to shares in a sense, you are exposed to the growth of the business as it succeeds, and you can publicly see that because every transaction is visible on the Ethereum public ledger. It's money, it's equity, and I suppose you would say it's also loyalty points, all rolled into one. Ultimately, that is the unlock. Section 3, transparency and trust. Here's another reason that this is all so powerful. It's the on-chain transparency piece. You see, when a startup raises money through traditional means, you, as an investor, have no real-time view into what's happening. You're relying on, glossy pitch decks or quarterly updates, if you're lucky, probably half yearly in reality, and usually they're heavily curated by spin. Yes, okay, the accountants created it, but the marketing people and the PR people got their hands on it after it was created, and it got turned into something that told you a really nice story. But when transactions happen in a tokenized ecosystem, they are all visible on chain. You can literally see the lifeblood of the business. You don't need to trust someone. You can actually verify the truth because it is publicly visible on that blockchain the immediate moment, or perhaps some seconds after, every transaction happens. That level of accountability, it changes the game. Now, let's face it, for someone like myself, who's the founder of the platform, it can put a little bit of weight on your shoulders because there is no glossy pitch deck to hide behind. You have to make this thing succeed because it is publicly visible. But it builds trust with your community, not because you say the right words, but because your ledger can actually prove it. The ledger, the publicly visible blockchain, actually proves the success of the business. It proves that people are doing what you say they are doing and that the business is actually transacting. It is both transparent and it is trustworthy. Section 4, from utility to ecosystem. And here's where it goes next. Utility tokens evolve into ecosystem currencies. Big leap, I know, but utility tokens evolve into ecosystem currencies. Think about this for a moment. Think about how Apple built the App Store. They created their own closed economy where developers, users, and Apple itself all transact within what you might call is a walled garden. Or how gaming companies sell in-game currencies that fuel entire economies. Now imagine that, but without the walls. That's what startup currencies like KYMAi represent. They are liquid, tradable, and borderless. We are not an Apple App Store where you can only operate within that walled garden. Similarly, we're not a gaming platform like a Fortnite where you buy stuff in-game and everything that is traded within game is within their walled garden. No, we are liquid, tradable, and borderless. KYMAi doesn't just sit in your wallet. It powers an entire system of research automation, market intelligence, and insight tools. The more useful the ecosystem, the stronger the currency becomes. I'll say that again because it's pivotal. The more useful the ecosystem, the stronger the currency becomes. What that means is for someone like myself, again as a founder, your motivation to make a more and more useful ecosystem becomes higher and higher and higher because you drive the strength of the currency. And in the case of KYMAi, it is a fixed supply, which means we're not going to be inventing more tokens. As we invent more ecosystem, the value of each token increases because the usefulness of it increases. It is directly tied to the usefulness of the platform. The value of the currency goes up as more stuff ends up in, functionally speaking, the ecosystem. Section 5, the near future. Tokenized everything. Here's the big prediction. In the next 5 to 10 years, I believe you're going to see tokenized everything. The conversation I had yesterday with that same very smart, very wealthy gentleman was QR codes were nothing until COVID came along. And he was right. QR codes did nothing. No one used them. Then all of a sudden, COVID came along and bam, QR codes are everywhere. Why? Because suddenly QR codes found their utility. They found their purpose. They found their reason for existing. What you will see with cryptocurrency, or rather crypto tokens, is that same thing. Tokenized businesses will become the norm because they will find their utility. Coffee shops will be launching loyalty tokens. Gyms will be rewarding attendance with their own token, or perhaps they will be actually billing in their own token and controlling access, again, using their own token. SaaS platforms like KnowYourMarket will be billing through tokens that also double as equity exposure. You've heard me tell the story already. It's a real-world case. It happens. But it won't feel weird. It will feel as normal as swiping your debit card, or arguably even more normal because it will be built into the devices that you use day to day. No more pulling out your wallet, no more pulling out that credit card. I think it will feel more normal because tokens will let you own a piece of the brands that you support. Tokens will let you own a piece of the brands that you support. They collapse the gap between customer and investor, and I think that's pretty cool. That's why I say every startup will launch its own currency. It is inevitable, ultimately. And KYMAi is one of the first to move in that direction. And that's why I am so proud of what we've achieved so far. So, to wrap this up, the old fundraising model, it's broken. It's tough, and it's stacked in favor of those with the money. Startup currencies are the new way to raise, grow, and align incentives. On-chain transparency builds real trust. You can't fake it. Tokens evolve into ecosystems, not just currencies. And again, I think that is pivotal. This idea of tokens not being currencies, but rather being ecosystems completely changes the way that people think about it and the way that they operate. And the future is tokenized everything. KYMAi is our shot at leading that wave. We're not just building another crypto project. It isn't fundamentally a crypto project. It is an AI SaaS platform with crypto baked in. But we are rethinking how businesses and communities operate from the ground up, taking it a completely different angle, not just starting up another thing and praying. It is building in fundamentals from the start, building in the fundamentals of community, building in the fundamentals of cryptocurrency, of AI, of SaaS, of shares in a different way. That is why I believe KYMAi is an absolute game changer, and I'm backing it all myself. Thanks for tuning in today to One to Deploy. If you are interested in learning more about KYMAi and what we're building at Know Your Market, head over to KnowYourMarket.ai or token.KnowYourMarket.ai. This has been One to Deploy. I'm your host, Daniel Martin, and as always, think sharp, build bold, one to deploy.